Hello, so now that we set up the project, our next iteration is to set up the app navigation. The reason this is we're going this way is because we have a design for the app, and if you where is that? So here it is. I have it as a. This is the PDF that you can download from the project. So the app has this is the main screen, and I set up the main screen to serve as the main, both the main screen as well as the game screen. So the game will take place on that screen, as you can see, where the user will start the game, and as you can see grayed out, these are the means through which the user will respond to the game or provide an answer to the node that they will play. The idea is the user will start the game, they will hear a random sound, and then these buttons will light up. They choose what they thought the sound is, and if it's correct, they get some feedback. If it's incorrect, they get feedback, and then it moves on for however many iterations a game will have, and then the game reaches the end state. But from here also the user can go to help and can go to the stats. So if they click on that question mark, they will go to the help screen. If they click on the stats, they go to the stats screen. The help screen has instructions of how you can play the game, and has also tutorials or practice. So there's also those buttons, and they are lit up, and you can click on the button and you hear the sound. So this is how the user can practice, and then after they are comfortable and ready to play, they can come back, start a game, and play the game, and so on. The stats screen will display the information about the different stats, and the game itself, as I mentioned, will take place on the game screen. So this is the game runs through different states, and we'll talk about them more when we get to that iteration. But there's a screen for the correct feedback, a screen for the incorrect feedback, and a screen for the game over, and the main screen is the beginning or about to start a new game. So since we have the design and the layout, and I know I need a main screen, and I need a help screen, and I need a stats screen, let's set up all that navigation and make sure that the app can navigate correctly. So that's why we have it in its own iteration like that. So the problem formulation, the scope will be set up the navigation to the help and stats screen, and the main screen will act as the game screen as well. This is main. And how do we test this? The testing scenario 1 is user clicks on the help button and navigate to the help screen, and likewise for the stats button and navigate to the stats screen. So we can have that as well, and then the user can navigate back from those screens to the main screen. The user clicks on the stats button and navigate to the stats screen, and back and back. All right, so the second part is the solution formulation, and in the model, no change here. In the view, that's where all the work will happen. So we need to set up the navigation controller as we did in project number 2, and then we will need to add a new screen on the storyboard, add new screens for the stats and help. We will need to add buttons and connect to the new screens. And on the controller, we will need to create custom controllers for each screen and link it to the screens. So on the solution implementation, these are the steps we're gonna do. So step number 1, we'll add a navigation controller. Step number 2, add 2 screens. Step 3, add buttons. Step 4, add segues. Step 5, add custom controllers. Step 6, connect the custom controllers. And step 7, test. Right, I'm going through this quickly because some of the feedback I got is, and I am expecting that. I know that I'm pushing you to do this, what I would call pre-thinking or about the implementation. And I think it's very important that you develop that habit. So you probably are frustrated that I'm pushing you to do that. And that's understandable because it's something new. And you may think that you don't really want to do this, you just want to finish the work. But this is because you know there is a solution. But once you are faced with a problem where you do not have a solution, you will appreciate the skills you are gaining from thinking through the application. So now we go back to the Xcode. And on the storyboard, we have our main screen. So to set up a navigation controller, we'll select the main screen and go to the editor. In the menu, you can see the menu, but I clicked on the editor menu, and there is the embed in and embed in navigation control. So click on that, and it will add a navigation controller. It will make the navigation controller the initial screen. It bumped my screen all the way up, so I'm bringing it so that you can see everything together. So the navigation controller immediately became the main screen, the initial controller. So here is the arrow that represents the initial controller, and there is a root view controller segue connected from the navigation controller to the main controller. On the navigation controller, you can choose to show the navigation bar, or you can say, no, I don't want to show the navigation bar. I'm going to need the navigation bar when we return from the different screens, so I'm going to keep it, even though I'm using the buttons for it. So the second part is adding the 2 other screens. So a screen is the navigation, is the view controller. So we'll add a view controller and maybe minimize this a little bit. So we'll add one view controller and we'll add another view controller. One of them will be help and the other one will be the stats. So I have 2 view controllers here. Next, I need to add buttons to navigate. So let's try the help first. So I'll add a help button. And if you look at the type of the button, you can see there are some information here. Information button, dark and light, or detail. So I can do information button. The standard information button is the I. So we'll just stay with that. And then connect that to the help screen. So from the button, press the control key and drag to the view controller and select the show segue. And this will add a controller. So if you add a navigation bar, so here is the first one, and then the second one will add another button, and we'll call this the stats, and then press the control on your keyboard and drag to the second screen and select show segue. So now I set up those navigations. Each one of the screens if you switch to the identity inspector in the utility area and select each of the screens we just added, by default they are managed by the standard UI view controller, which comes with the iOS library. Both of the new ones are like that, but the single view application template that we chose when we created the project has created a custom controller for our main screen. This is the view controller.swift, and linked that custom controller file with the main screen. So under the identity inspector, you see it is managed by the view controller, which is the custom controller file, not the UI view controller like the new ones that we added. So what we need to do now is to create custom controller files and link them to the two new screens. So if you right click in the navigation area and go to new file and select iOS, Coca, under the source category, Coca Touch class, and then next, we'll use the help. So it's a subclass of UI view controller. The reason for that is we selected from the object library, we selected a view controller. So the custom controller must be of the same type. So it has to be a subclass of view controller, and this will be the name. So we're going to call this help view controller. And the language is Swift. And then next, we'll ask you where you want to keep it. So you can have it in the main group, which is the main folder, or you can have it in a subgroup, which will be in the subfolder. We're going to keep it in the subgroup and then create. So now we have a help view controller that is added. And if we go back to the main storyboard and select our help screen, we can now on the drop down see the help view controller. So we switch from the standard controller to a custom controller. Now we need to repeat that again with the stats. Notice that the name on the view controller now became help view controller. If you add another file, you can do that by clicking add and then add file, or right click like we did before under iOS Coca Touch class. Next, it's a subclass of UI view controller because that's what we added, view controller, and we're gonna call this the stats view controller. And then next, it will ask you where you want to save it, but it will remember your choices that we just made, and then create. So we added another custom controller called the stats. So if I go back to the main view controller and select the controller, and in the identity inspector under class, you will find the stats view controller. So select stats view controller. So now I have 3 screens and they are connected to each other through these buttons. So we can test by running the app. It takes a few moments to build. So our launch screen, and then we'll see the main screen. So I have the help. If you click help, we should navigate to the help view controller, and then the back button is added automatically for us because we selected the show segue. And then in the stats view controller, here is the back button. The one last thing that we need to do is to name those segues. So we select the help. If you select the segue that connects to the help view controller, in the attribute inspector, there's an identifier property. So we'll give it a name. So we'll call it help segue. And then on the second segue, in the identifier, we're going to call it stats segue. So we added both of them. And I'm going to add the game screen button. We're not going to play with it now, but we'll add it so that we can say we completed the main controller. So game or start game. I have this with white background, but you don't have to make it white background. You can change that to anything that you want. So let's try that. The game button doesn't do anything. So we have the help and we have the stats, and the start game doesn't do anything yet. So that's iteration number 2, and in the next iteration we'll build the help screen. Thank you.